Yeah, this is another lesson on company law. Now, in company law, our areas of coverage: company law, types of companies, formation of companies, doctrines, organic of companies, methods of raising capital, winding up. Introduction: understanding the terminologies. Company, artificial person created by law. Whereas when you talk about law, a set of rules or norms of conduct which forbid, permits, or mandate specific action. So in the word company, there are two words. We have company and we have law. According to Company Act 1985, Section 1, Subsection 1, any two or more persons associated for a lawful purpose may, by subscribing their names to the Memorandum of Association and otherwise complying with the requirement of this Act in respect to the registration, form an incorporated company with or without limited liability. Introduction. The Company Act 2015, that is according to Companies Act in Kenya's Constitution, Section 3, a company formed and registered under this Act or any other existing company. So when you talk about Company Act, it's actually based on Section 3 of Companies Act 2015. So according to Professor Ane, company means an artificial person created by law having separate entity with limited liability, perpetual succession, and common seal. Now that is what we mean by company. Features of a company: separate legal entity. Now when you talk about separate legal entity, we are referring to a company and ownership are two different entities. So we need to have a divorce between the ownership of the company and the company itself. 2. Limited liability. Now when you talk about limited liability, we are referring to when there are debts or losses. The debts and losses will be paid by the company. So the owner's properties are not at risk. Transferability of shares. So shares, if it's a private company, you can transfer shares from one company to another. But if it is a private company, there is no transferability of shares. Perpetual succession. Now when you talk about perpetual succession, there are two very important terminologies: perpetual and succession. Perpetual means continuous, succession means success. So any company must be continuous and successful. Can own and sell property. So a company can own and sell property. Management. Company is normally managed by board of directors. Legal business. So the business which must be run by a company must be legal, meaning that any legal business will not be allowed to be registered as a company. Artificial person. So a company is artificial person. Remember, we have a natural person and artificial person. So a company takes the qualities of a person in the sense that it can sue and it can be sued. Common seal. Now when you talk about common seal, company is an artificial person, so it cannot sign. So the signature of a company is what we call common seal. So these are the features of a company. Types. It shows how companies are formed. Now, when you talk about types of companies, this is how companies are formed on the basis of incorporation. Now when we talk about on the basis of incorporation, we have three types of companies. 1, chartered companies. 2, statutory company. And 3, registered company. On the basis of members, we have private company and public company. So in private company, the minimum is 2 and the maximum is 50. In public company, the minimum is 7 and the maximum is infinite. Types. On the basis of control, we have holding companies. So these are companies which have control over the rest. The other companies, when it is merged together, subsidiary companies. These are companies which are under holding company. On the basis of ownership, government companies. So these are companies which are owned by the government. Non-government companies. So these are companies which are owned by individuals. So when you talk about owned by government, most of the shares are run by the government, 51% and above. And on the basis of nationality of company, home companies, these are companies which are within the country. Foreign company, these are companies which are outside the home company. Chartered companies. What do you mean by chartered companies? They are companies which are formed by Royal Chartered. The powers and nature of business of chartered company are defined by the charter which incorporates it. So chartered means it's formed under the declaration of a ruler or a king. Which are these companies? For example, Bank of England was formed under the command of Queen Elizabeth. East India Company, that is another example. Statutory company, they are companies which are formed which are formed under special act which is passed by the central or state legislators. So these are companies which are formed under the command of members of parliament or central. The powers and the nature of business of statutory companies are defined by the act which incorporates it. They have no memorandum and article of association. For example, we have Central Bank of Kenya, which was under the Act of Government. KRA, which was Act of Parliament. Formed under the Act of Parliament. Registered companies. Which are these companies? They are companies which are formed by registration by the Registrar of Companies with a fee. The powers and the nature of registered companies are defined by the Company Act which incorporates it. The most popular mode of incorporating company. Type, Safaricom, Equity, and the rest. So formation. The stages of followed in the formation of company. So these are stages which are normally followed while you're forming a company. 1, we have promoter stage. 2, we have incorporation stage. 3, we have raising of capital stage. And finally, trade certificate stage.